I'm Jim Monaghan from the WDHA Morning Jolt. Every weekday morning at 7 o'clock, we have the 7 o'clock Guitar Shred. It's brought to you by Guitar Repair Services in Scotch Plains, and that's where we are today in this amazing shop. Bobby, welcome.
Thank you.
And today we want to talk about amplification. So you've got some really cool amps here. Tell us about them.
These are Tyler amps. They're made 10 minutes away from here in Westfield, New Jersey. A man by the name of John Britton. These are basically a boutique amp, hand-wired, no circuit boards. They're based on vintage model amps.
I was going to say they look like amps that you're familiar with.
Yeah,
definitely.
the tweed covers and the black Tolex, and he does probably 20 or 30 different Tolexes that you can special order from him. He makes combo amps, which are popular today because a lot of people don't want to carry around heads and cabinets, but he does make a head and cabinet version of every amp that he makes. He makes a head and cabinet version. You can get 1x12 cabinets, 2x12 cabinets, and the nice part about these amps is they're all basically different. They're all based off of a different amplifier. This one here is basically a Marshall Plexi, mid-60s Marshall Plexi, like a JTM 45 Marshall Plexi. The circuitry is, in this particular amp, is based on a Marshall / Fender Bassman. It's got a master volume, and it's got a channel jump, just like the old Marshall Plexis used to have in the 60s. You can jump to 2 channels, or you can just go through channel 1, but you can jump to 2 channels and get a combination of a Marshall and a Fender Bassman.
Wow.
That's 45 watt amp, but all of his amps are underrated. 45 watts sounds more like 90, really. The one next to it is a Vox, his version of a Vox AC30.
That's the legendary
AC30,
mid-60s that every British invasion band had at one point or another.
It's got that chimey Vox sound to it. Same basic thing. You have one channel here. You have a second channel over here with a. This one actually has a tone switch, a 5-position tone switch, so you can get 5 different sounds out of it. So you're not limited to just a Vox tone, and it also has a master volume on it.
How close does he get to the sound of the Vox AC30 with that?
He actually, that particular amp, he told me that he purposely took some of the glassiness out of it because old Voxes have a tendency to be very trebly, little ice picky on the high end, and he took that out of the amp when he built it. It still sounds like a Vox circuit, still sounds like a Vox AC30, but he took that shrillness out of the top end of the amp. And this, actually, up until I heard this amp, that was my favorite amp, Marshall. But then when I heard the Vox, now I'm on the fence now. I don't know which one it is. And this one here is basically your Fender Princeton. It's a reverb. It has a reverb unit in it and a tremolo unit built into it. Simple 15-watt Fender Princeton amp. Sounds exactly like a Fender Princeton did back in the 60s.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is based on the vintage Fender, not something that you see now. Okay.
No. Doesn't sound anything like the reissues. None of these do. You know, a lot of the Fender reissues today don't even sound like Fenders anymore. You know, they don't sound anything like the originals. And he basically builds these amps to sound like the original amps that they're intended to sound like. And that one on the end, the brown tweed, is a 50s style tweed amp, which is a 20-watt version. And for gigging musicians, these are great amps because they have a ton of headroom. I've never heard amps this small with the headroom that these amps have. You basically have to use his pedals or a pedal, either a tube screamer or something, to slam the front end of his amps because you can dime these amps up to 10 and they're not going to hardly distort. So if you're a blues player, you like nice, clean Fender tones, Marshall tones, these are the amps because he uses a 150-watt speaker in all these amps, and they're only 15, 20-watt amps.
Wow.
And these are actually 45s, but he uses a 150-watt speaker in the amp, eminent speakers in the amp, so you can just imagine how much headroom they have.
How did he get started doing this?
I think he's always been into instruments and amplifiers, you know, even younger, when he was younger. And I think he just saw that there was a gap to fill, you know, to make accurate reproductions of amps. You know, there's a lot of guys out there doing it now, boutique amps, but he's really focused on making them sound the way that they did sound back in the 60s and the 50s. And if you play them, most of the people that play these amps are blown away by just the tone and the sound out of these things.
And then when I was younger and I'd go to concerts and you'd see that big wall of amplification that was up there. Are guitarists getting away from that, or is still that visual?
Yeah, a lot of that was visual. Most of that was all fake anyway. You know, I mean, there's no possible way you could use all that. You know, it's most of the time the main amp that they were playing with wasn't even on stage; it was behind stage. But you know, these are giggable amplifiers. That's what people like about them. They can throw them in their car, they can throw them in the trunk, in the back seat, and if you play a small to medium-sized gig, these are more than enough power. They have more than enough power and are loud enough to cover a medium-sized venue. And you know, given the price point of these amps, they start, depending on which one, they start at around $1,400 and go up to a little over $2,000 for the Voxes, and he does a twin reverb also. He does a Fender twin reverb version, which are basically the biggest amps that he builds. Price point for these, for a hand-wired boutique-made amp, you can't touch them today. I mean, you could pay $3,000 plus for a hand-wired, handmade amp today.
And if you're looking to buy an amp like this, this is the place to come, right?
Yeah, this is, I think we are one of the only, other than one other music store in New Jersey that carries these amps.
For more information on these incredible amplifiers, and this is the place to come, Guitar Repair Services in Scotch Plains. You can find them online at helpmyguitar.com.